Activision Blizzard is no stranger to the mistreatment of employees. The executives in particular clearly see employees as tools to be used and discarded. They see them as disposable, and this is evidenced by all of the major layoffs we've seen from Activision during years in which they saw record revenue. And we have yet another such case, according to an investigation from Jason Schreier, who tweeted, "Just filed to Bloomberg Terminal, Blizzard is laying off 50 people today in its live events department as it plans a strategy shift post-pandemic. This news arrives a month after Activision Blizzard once again announced record revenues and upped dividends to shareholders." Look, I acknowledge that there are situations in which companies need to lay people off because of financial issues, because they cannot afford to keep people around, but this is not the case for Activision Blizzard. They're making more money than ever before. They keep topping themselves year after year. There's simply no excuse for the way they're laying people off in a really cruel manner where a lot of these employees weren't even told they were going to be laid off until they found out from articles, but I'll get to that in a bit. For now, though, let's take a look at Jason Schreier's article published on Bloomberg here. The headline reads, "Activision fires dozens amid shift away from live events." Now, initial reporting suggested that we might be looking at around 50 employees who were fired or laid off, namely from esports programming and other live events, people involved in organizing those. But it was later reported that, well, looks like the number is actually significantly higher. According to one of Jason's sources, dismissals affect less than 2% of the total workforce, or fewer than 190 employees. It's looking like almost 200 employees were laid off, including 50 in the esports programming and other live events department. The rest were from other parts of the company. For example, among the cuts were employees at King.com, the maker of Candy Crush. As for the reasoning behind this, well, Activision Blizzard is planning to host more online events rather than in-person events. As relayed by Bloomberg, Activision plans a broader shift away from in-person events after a year of coronavirus lockdowns. And a spokesperson for Activision said, "Players are increasingly choosing to connect with our games digitally, and the esports team, much like traditional sports, entertainment, and broadcasting industries, has had to adapt its business due to the impact the pandemic has had on live events." Activision Blizzard did recently host BlizzCon in a purely online virtual fashion because of the way the world is right now. And it would seem as though that was successful enough and effective enough that they deemed that format to be kind of their new standard. And one has to wonder whether BlizzCon will return as an in-person event or whether they plan to keep that just purely virtual and online moving forward, given that it's just a lot cheaper to do so. And because of the digital kind of social media age that we live in, it's a lot easier for word to spread. The pandemic has certainly accelerated the inevitable process of live events becoming less of a necessity, or rather in-person events becoming less of a necessity for a lot of these companies. But at the same time, I do think that people more than ever are missing the ability to socialize and congregate. And so I think in-person events are really going to see a huge surge post-pandemic. As for what laid-off employees will be receiving, well, they are getting a 90-day severance and health benefits package for a year, which, isn't bad, but still, when you lose a job, it's an upending of your current life circumstances. It's still a rough situation. And then the insulting thing really is that these fired employees are getting a $200 gift card for Battle.net. Aside from the fact that they could have gone much higher than $200 for the gift card, this feels like an encouragement for Activision Blizzard employees who are fired to spend their money on Activision Blizzard products. And not only are these layoffs happening during yet another record revenue year for Activision, there's also the fact that they generally have an optimistic outlook for this year and next, expecting to hire 3,000 people in 2021. I can tell you right now, Activision Blizzard has no problem being able to afford keeping all of the people they recently laid off around, shuffling them around the company and giving them something to do. They just are taking the easy route of just disposing of the tools that they no longer need instead of seeing them as human beings, I highly doubt that executives of Activision put much effort into figuring out ways to keep these employees around. And this is further evidenced by information I received from my own sources about this situation. So 50 of the around 190 of those who were laid off were from the IT events team, the people who take care of events like BlizzCon, Overwatch League, and Call of Duty League, again signaling that Activision Blizzard is shifting away from in-person events and maybe going as digital as possible. And then another division that was affected is what the source relayed was called the IT PMO team, who are basically people who work with game teams to accommodate their needs for upcoming events. Now, what makes this situation particularly shitty, aside from the fact that Activision Blizzard is just laying off people as if they were disposable, despite them having seen a record year in revenue and despite them clearly being able to afford keeping people around and giving them jobs, which is their responsibility as employers. Aside from all that, it turns out that these employees were not warned about the fact that they were getting laid off at all. According to my source, there was practically no communication about this to the broader company, and the majority of teams had no idea about the layoffs until they started seeing the articles. So basically, a lot of employees found out that they were losing their jobs at around the same time that the general public did. And my sources report that there was such little communication and that the layoffs were so sudden that one Activision employee who was speaking to a designer saw that designer just completely disappear from Slack, which is this business communication platform that Activision uses, in the middle of that meeting, in the middle of that conversation. And making an already awful situation worse is the fact that while people within the company are getting no information, there's no communication going around within the company itself, leadership is giving out interviews to news outlets and telling them the information that the employee should know first. My sources specifically called out this man, an executive by the name of Tony Petiti, who is the president of sports and entertainment at Activision Blizzard. This man has been prioritizing speaking to news outlets and doing PR damage control rather than communicating with employees and telling them what the hell is going on, and further pissing off employees. And yes, employees are pissed, according to my sources, though that should come as no surprise, is what Petiti has been saying to these news outlets, the excuses that he's giving about why these employees were laid off. So speaking to Sports Business Journal, for example, it was highlighted how the cuts, Petiti acknowledged, are due to a mixture of needing to reduce costs and also reallocate certain resources to other areas, making it out to be that Activision Blizzard is struggling financially when they're doing incredibly well, better than ever before. A specific quote I got from one of my sources is, in a sarcastic tone, "Sure, because Activision Blizzard didn't have yet another record year, didn't raise the stock dividends, and didn't give Bobby Kotick, the CEO of Activision Blizzard, more money." And I'll remind you that this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Back in 2019, there was a major round of layoffs at Activision Blizzard while executives were getting bonuses by the millions. So on January of 2019, for example, it was reported that a new CFO, Dennis Durkin, was given $15 million just because he signed on for the job. That was a month before reports began to surface that Activision Blizzard was planning to cut hundreds of jobs. Lo and behold, fast forward a few days to February 12th, and it was reported that Activision Blizzard cut nearly 800 jobs amid record results in 2018. And this made headlines across numerous media outlets, and Kotaku specifically, and Jason Schreier's reporting back then, had reported the uncertainty of employees who had been coming to work with no clue as to what might happen. One person at Blizzard told me this morning that as employees arrived, they cried and exchanged hugs in the parking lot. They're just not even given the common courtesy of being told how things are going to play out, being communicated with properly so that they have ways to plan out their future. They're just kind of kept in the dark constantly, and with the latest round of layoffs, it's even worse. It is inconceivable to me that a company cares so little about their employees that many of them would find out that they were fired from a frickin' article. As for the excuse that Activision CEO Bobby Kotick provided then for why the mass layoffs happened. He said, while our financial results for 2018 were the best in our history, we didn't realize our full potential. Let me remind you that these companies are not seeking to make enough money to be sustainable as a company. They're trying to make all the money in the world. And if that means unnecessarily cutting staff or upending the livelihoods of people when they don't really need to, they'll go ahead and do it. They serve one Lord and one Lord only, and that's money. And just to really drive home that Activision Blizzard is making more than enough money, that the layoffs are highly unnecessary, and just the amount of money that Activision Blizzard makes moves around. Here's an article from June of 2020 talking about how CEO Bobby Kotick was making so much money that Activision Blizzard shareholders got pissed off and straight up wanted to vote against a proposal to remunerate Kotick in line with previous years. The guy didn't meet certain performance targets, and he was still asking for the same amount of dozens of millions of dollars he made last time. Not only is Bobby Kotick making more money than even his CEO peers at similar companies, but it also wasn't lost on investors that Bobby Kotick was asking for this kind of compensation during a year in which he laid off 800 staff. While those people are out of work, Bobby Kotick is just gorging himself and lining his pockets. Utterly disgusting. How much does CEO Bobby Kotick make exactly? Well, as of August of 2020, Jason Schreier reported that the guy's making roughly $40 million a year. Oh, but do you really want to hear something that will make your blood boil? Well, most recently, in parallel to the 190 some employees being laid off, CEO Bobby Kotick received a payout worth $200 million. The way this payout was explained by GameSpot reads as follows. The massive payout was thanks to the shareholder value creation incentive provision in his employment agreement. This loophole allows Kotick to receive a full performance equity payout from previous years, regardless of whether company milestones were reached. As a result, and in the face of the company's share price increasing over 66% since December 2019, Kotick will get cash rewards dating back to 2017. So while employees are being laid off for no reason or because a game didn't meet certain sales expectations or whatever, this CEO is exploiting loopholes to give himself hundreds of millions of dollars, even though he didn't meet his performance targets, even though he didn't perform to the level that warrants such a payout. And this is precisely what investment group CTW expressed when they said that Activision stock rising in the past few months doesn't alone justify such a substantial pay outcome for the CEO, especially given that the whole of the games industry was boosted by COVID because everyone's locked up at home and they're seeking entertainment. And so, to that effect, CTW said that the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, has been a boon to many companies in the gaming industry, irrespective of executive talent or strategic decisions. So Bobby Kotick did nothing special to boost the stock price of Activision. That's just how things turned out because of the nature of the pandemic. $200 million this son of a bitch is raking in while he lays people off during a record year of revenue. If he took a significant pay cut, he would still have more than enough money for his lifestyle of luxury, and he would be able to save a lot of jobs. But obviously, Bobby Kotick's concern isn't the human beings that are staffed under him. His concern isn't to preserve jobs, it's to maximize profit, while this guy makes $40 million a year on top of the $200 million he very recently received. Some Blizzard employees say they can't even make ends meet, as reported by Jason in this article, in which he highlighted a situation in which a spreadsheet was being spread across Blizzard as workers protested the fact that the wage disparity between ground floor employees and some of the folks at leadership was just ridiculous. Based on the record revenue that Activision keeps making, and based on all of the money that is going to the top, It's abundantly clear that Activision Blizzard has more than enough money to pay their employees more and to keep their employees around. One of the more harrowing stories spoke of an employee who told Bloomberg that they were making less money now than they were making 10 years ago and are only getting significant pay raises when they leave to competitor companies such as HaDe Games. Somebody else talked about how they took a pay cut to join Blizzard and then they double their salary a year after they were let go. I don't want to hear ever again that companies like Activision, EA, Ubisoft, Take-Two, you name it, aren't making enough money, that game development is too costly, and that's why you need all of the microtransactions and loot boxes, the season passes, the battle passes, the deluxe editions. And I certainly don't want to hear that these multi-billion-dollar AAA companies are justified in their decision to increase their game prices from $60 to $70, especially when they're microtransactions infested. While the base price of games might have stayed $60 for a while, the business model of games has evolved significantly with all of the extra monetization systems layered on top. That has made the $60 just kind of the shell price of a game. Games have gotten more expensive just through other means beyond the base price, which is why game companies have been so well off, why they've been raking it in and breaking their own records year after year. And despite all of this, where does that money go? That money certainly doesn't go to employees who deserve to be paid better. And not enough of that money goes into game development. Most of that money goes to the top. Looking at the amount of money Activision Blizzard makes and the way that money is moving around, you will never convince me that Activision Blizzard firing dozens of employees, almost 200 employees most recently, was an absolute necessity, that there weren't alternative solutions. Activision Blizzard executives just chose not to explore those solutions. Taking care of people just isn't profitable. So these executives and these companies have no reason to put much effort into taking care of people. That is the sad reality. But yeah, these Activision Blizzard executives, just a bunch of scumbags inhabiting an incredibly scummy company. That's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this situation, about this latest round of layoffs from Activision. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.